Me here today. Sorry about that. That was very clear. I think we've all understood that we are being recorded, so I hope nobody has a problem with that. But I'm happy to be here with an amazing and extraordinarily interesting group of panelists who will be helping the debate. This is Professor Urs Niggli, who is the president of Agroecology Science, the Institute for Sustainable Food and Farming Systems, which was established in 2020. We also have Dr. Vincent Martin, who's currently the director of FAO's Innovation Office. Welcome. We have Mildred Nadah Pita, who is a business executive currently serving as the head of Public Affairs Science and Sustainability Africa for Bayer Crop Science Division. Welcome. We have Mr. Ravichandran, who is president of the Global Farmer Network and owner of 60-acre farm at Kurungam village in Tamil Nadu. I am terribly sorry for my pronunciation. I'm sure I've done a lot of terrible mistakes, but feel free to mispronounce my name afterwards as a punishment. I will take it. And then we have Dr. Petronella Chaminuka, who is the head of the Economic Analysis Unit of the Agricultural Research Council of South Africa. So we are looking forward to an extraordinary debate. I know you're not here to listen to me. Just to give you a couple of heads up, please have your microphone on mute. I know everyone is now fully accustomed to these virtual debates and online debates. As we said, we will be recording this debate. We also hope that this debate will be able to give us some concrete options and ideas for future development. And without further ado, I'd like to give the floor to Professor Urs Niggli, who will be giving us the thought starter for the debate. Urs, the floor is yours. Urs, you're still on mute. I'm sorry.
Thanks a lot, Erika. It's a great pleasure to be here for this panel discussion. And my job is to give a short introduction into agroecology. And I'll do that with a presentation. Okay, the title of my presentation will be Sustainable Food System Management and Innovation, the Role of Agroecology. Next, please. I will talk about the outcome of the UNFSS 2021, which was a main recommendation on boost nature-positive production. What does that mean for sustainable food system and also for innovation, the role of knowledge and innovation in sustainable...
Will you please be quiet?
The role of innovation in sustainable food system. Agroecology as a comprehensive, integrative, and solution-oriented discourse between scientific knowledge and practice, and coming then to the conclusion. Next one. So one of the outcome of the UNFSS 2021 was that was the result of the debate within the scientific group that we should boost nature positive production, and we specified that a little bit. One of the most important points and approaches is that we protect natural systems from new conversion for food production, so maintain natural landscapes and systems. The second one is sustainably manage existing food production systems. And there I put a big question mark, because that's a lot about debate and polarization on that. What does that mean? And the third point was restore and rehabilitate degraded systems for food production and ecosystem services. Next one. So what do we mean?
Recording in progress.
What do we mean by sustainably managed existing food production systems? we mean that we need productive agricultural systems that use but do not consume and destroy the natural resources of soil, water, air, and biodiversity. For this purpose, we need a lot of knowledge and a lot of science. So we need traditional knowledge passed on by women in the countries of the global south mainly. We need a peasant experience, we need peasant entrepreneurship, and we need constant innovation. That's also very important. We cannot only rely on already existing knowledge, we need permanently the input of innovation and new knowledge. And in terms of innovation, we need all kinds of innovation: social, institutional innovations, scientific and technological innovations, and continuous ecological improvement. So what do we mean by these different categories of innovations? Next one. Uh, Innovation should improve both productivity and sustainability. So we have different categories like social and institutional innovations, and I mentioned a few of them, which are extremely important when we talk about food security. So, for instance, social innovations are farmer-consumer partnerships, living labs, so doing research on farms, food hubs, online food shops, urban agriculture, farmer-to-farmer cooperations, but also institutional innovations like clear land tenure and lease, access to markets and intact transport routes, but also suitable storage facilities. So these kind of innovation are basics and extremely important. The next point is ecological innovations or optimization, meaning better understand and sustainably manage, for instance, soil fertility, and also using biodiversity in a functional way in order to improve productivity indirectly. Then we have all kinds of technological innovation like plant and livestock breeding, functional microbiological techniques like the biome of the soil, using it, like also the biome on plants. Biostimulants, there are so many novel technologies coming on the market and novel knowledge. Then, of course, digitalization, nanotechnology, material science, and engineering. So we do not prefer one category of innovation. We need all these different categories. Next one. So to give an example, that every innovation, we don't distinguish between unsustainable or destroying innovations and sustainable innovation, because every innovation can be used to make production systems more resilient and sustainable, or it can be used for the opposite. This is um, uh, shown here with precision farming, with digitalization. You can use it in a clever way, like for redesigning farms, redesigning landscape, bringing back diversity and differentiation into landscape and on farms. So this is a very good example of the Tompkins Foundation on this huge 3,000 hectare organic farm, Laguna Blanca in Argentina, where they applied strip and contour farming. So this is almost the perfect crop rotation and the perfect landscape quality. But we can also use it like dummies, meaning that we use the same technology in order to make fields bigger, more monotone, and in order to apply monocropping systems. Next one. behind agroecological transformation means that we want to increase the biodiversity of farms and landscapes while maintaining or improving productivity, even using diversity as a as to strategy to improve productivity. And there are a lot of scientific meta-analysis on that, that it is possible that diversification can reduce trade-offs between productivity and ecological sustainability. And that's exactly what we want. We want to reduce trade-offs. So diversification doesn't mean to reduce yields. It can even mean the opposite. So there are some examples which are often practiced by organic farmers, like mixed cropping systems, like alley cropping systems, like intercropping between two crops. And these diversification can also be used by conventional farmers, and they should become used by conventional farmers because we want to with agroecological transformation, we want to mainstream such diversification strategy. The next one. So how Glissman described an agroecological transformation of farms, but also of nutrition, and with that of the entire society. He described it in 5 steps. So step 1 or level 1 is increasing efficiency. So this is the very first step, that we use all inputs in a very efficient and effective way. Step 2 is replacing industrial and conventional inputs and practices with alternative practices. Step 3, transforming the agroecosystem so that it becomes self-regulating, regenerative, and resilient. This is a very important step, and it helps to massively reduce farm inputs. Step 4 is then restoring farmer-consumer exchanges, creating shorter value chains, changing eating patterns of consumers to more plant-based protein. And finally, the 5th step is a societal paradigm shift in terms of consumption, policy, and trade. So this is how the 10 elements of FAO's work on agroecology can be transformed into relevance, into practice. Next one. So in order to achieve that, we need to motivate the farmers, but also other stakeholders in the food chain to continuously optimize this process towards becoming more sustainable. And fortunately, a lot of work has been done in the last 10 years on indicators for sustainability, and also the metrics where you can measure the degree of sustainability. And it started about 10, 12 years ago with the SAFA guidelines of FAO. So FAO did an excellent work on that to give a holistic approach to sustainability, not only measuring one indicator, but always taking into account all the relevant indicator. Meanwhile, there are a lot of scientific tools out in Europe, but also in other parts of the world. They are called RISE, SMART, SALCA, REPRO, and so on. It is already partly on the market with EcoScore, PlanetScore, and so on. So a lot of work has been done on that. And there is a specific scientific tool where you can measure the degree of the progress towards transformation towards agroecological farming system called TAPE. What we have developed in our institute together with the State Research Institute in Switzerland, Agroscope, is that we simplified these scientific tools so it can be used as a calculator for environmental impact, for climate change and biodiversity by farmers after very short training, because we want to empower farmers to take responsibility for their own transformation towards more sustainable production. Next one. So what do we mean by agroecological farming? So basically, it's not reduced to organic. Organic is only a tiny part of agroecological farming. There are some basic and relevant differences between organic farming and what we mean by agroecological farming. So on the principal levels, we have a lot of similarities, but agroecological farming has no mandatory standards, while organic farming is very strictly defined. In agroecological farming, we don't want to work mainly with bans and detailed restriction. We want to have the responsibility of the farmers to choose what they need to optimize their farms in terms of economic, social, and ecological sustainability. We also have no inspection, and it is a very dynamic social learning process for farmers. And on the other hand, organic farming is inspection and certification driven. It addresses a certain market and is therefore restricted to the consumer demand. And either you practice everything or you are not part of the organic movement. Next one. Next one. So we are convinced that we need new, more appropriate narratives. The classical narratives also used by many NGOs is that a system approach is much more effective for addressing multiple challenges than a silver bullet technology like precision farming or novel breeding technology. That is clear. We accept that, but we can extend this narrative, because the better narrative, in our opinion, is we need both diversified production system and best modern science-based technology. The combination of both is the best one. So we don't need silver bullet technologies which are not integrated into sustainable farming systems. And you can give a lot of different examples for that. And as we will talk today about breeding methods and breeding technologies, we have to mention that also organic farming has only developed of excellent breeding, of excellent breeds of excellent crops, like apple crops, like apple, for instance, without resistances in apples, the organic market wouldn't have developed. Next one. The final one. So a sustainable framework for food system is urgently needed and must be implemented with indicators and metrics, as well as tools that give farmers room for individual maneuver. So to empower farmers with indicators and with tools for measuring sustainability is important. Diversification is the key to sustainable yield and income growth. Diversification, not monocropping systems. The most effective on-farm measures are diversified crop rotations, alley cropping, and to a lesser extent, intercropping and mixed cropping. There is a lot of literature on that. Innovation for agriculture are overwhelmingly numerous and solve problems. So innovation at the core of the future development. And agroecological agriculture offers a holistic innovation strategy with social, institutional, environmental, and technological elements. Thanks a lot for your attention.
Thank you very much, Professor Niggli, for giving this fascinating overview of the challenges and the problems. Of course, I fully echo your sentiment for the call for new narratives and for the need to change this patterns of thinking. And I'm sure there will be a lot of questions later. We will be having a lot of time for Q&A afterwards, but I would like to pick up on a couple of points that I think are particularly fascinating and that will also be very useful for the rest of the panelists. And one is, I would say, the deepening of what we mean by innovation. You gave a clear view that innovation is much broader than just scientific and technological innovation. It's included, but there's a broad variety, and this is much more complete than maybe what the initial kind of basic narratives look at. And the other element that I also found extraordinarily interesting is how the concept of sustainability has also evolved to become much more complex, including not only environmental sustainability, but social, economic, and obviously governance sustainability, and that this will require a shift forward. And how do we bring together sustainability and innovation? That is the biggest challenge and what we're here to discuss today. So I think it's wonderful to be able to give the floor now to our first panelist, Dr. Vincent Martin, as you know, the director of FAO's Innovation Center. I think there is nobody better to give us a thought starter and look at in a little bit on what do you think are the biggest challenges in your experience. What do you think we need to look at? And what are the biggest opportunities as well? Because there's not only a challenge, there's also a huge opportunity. Dr. Martin, the floor is yours.
Thank you so much, Erika. I'm joining you from China. I've just landed here today. And actually, it's interesting to say that, I mean, as you say, the debate is quite polarized on innovation and sustainability, but very interesting to be in a country like China. I've been living in China, I've been living in Africa in many different settings. And here you can see how much this topic of sustainability is really taking off the ground. It's taking really, there is a real momentum today in a country like China discussing about empowering farmers, doing co-innovation, looking at community-supported agriculture. I had a meeting just this afternoon with the coordinator of community-supported agriculture here. And you can see all the thinking which is really growing in a country which was recognized as a country using a lot of inputs for its agriculture, but things are changing. And it's very reassuring, I would say, to see it changing in a country like China, because of the potential to influence also the rest of the world. Having said that, I could say I couldn't agree more with what was said just before. In FAO, we take innovation from its broader perspective, from technological perspective, social, institutional. We look at all the spectrum of solutions, we have in the agricultural sector. And what I think is we've got an incredible momentum today with the Food System Summit and the National Pathway for Food System Transformation that now exists in most of the countries in the world. This is something that didn't exist 3 years ago. It started in 2021 with the Food System Summit, And we had the Food System Summit +2 recently in Rome, and which show how much passion or how much interest the agricultural sector is gaining today at the global level to solve not just a problem of food security, but to solve a series of problems. And I'm mentioning it because the way the Food System Summit was conceived is to say food system, agriculture, food security is an entry point for transformation and to really reach out to other sustainable development goals, not just the one working on or trying to solve the problem of hunger and food insecurity. No, it's really by using food system transformation, we have a chance really to accelerate the transformation of other dimensions, including in education, including social protection. So I think it's just to recognize that it has been recognized at the highest level, at the global level from the UN system. And that's why we have this Food System Summit +2, and we've got a national pathway for food system transformation, which is an incredible entry point for bringing innovation and technology. Having said that, you were asking me, so what do you see the biggest challenges today? I think there is a growing consensus on the range of innovation we can use and we need to use to change the narrative. There is a growing consensus. We can do better, but there is a growing consensus. Now what I see is that, and I think it was mentioned by Urs, is the complexity of the systems we are trying to change, the diversity of these systems. When in my position at the global level, you are sitting in Rome, and then
Hello?
Some connectivity issue.
It seems like Mr. Martin is offline, or at least blocked, so maybe we can go to the next person.
Well, I think let's wait to see a little bit if he manages to connect again. It's always the technology that in the end that has these problems. But I think it's extraordinarily exhilarating and positive to hear the will that he feels also at a global level with these big, so the Food System Summit and the big international attention that has been given to that.
Now Mr. Martin is back.
Wonderful.
Yeah. I'm sorry. I think, yeah, I've got connections problems, but yeah, I don't know where I left, but it was really to try to address the issues of the complexity of the world we are working in, the diversity of the food systems at the global level, and ultimately the fact that innovation work as a catalyst of certain actions we are having, and then we have to find the right innovation at the right place with the right impact. And we are developing methodologies to do that. And maybe the final word as an introduction is to say, in FAO, we've set up a very ambitious agenda with the Science and Innovation Strategy that was launched in 2021. Again, just to say that science and innovation has become prominent in this area, and in FAO, this Office of Innovation that I'm managing and the Chief Scientist Office has been created just 2 or 3 years ago. But we wanted to set a very, very ambitious agenda for food system transformation, and we now have the Science and Innovation Strategy that is here to provide the framework, the context on how we can use innovation, science, technology to support the food system transformation. If you want, I can stop here and then we might come back to some elements in the discussion.
Thank you very much, Dr. Martin. And I was just mentioning before when you got disconnected, how exciting to see about all these big global initiatives, how food is gaining prominence. And I think this is one of the things that we hope seeing later in the discussion is really to look, what can we do concretely in order to push this forward and to push this agenda forward to say, how do we put innovation in its multiple forms as a way to reach these very ambitious sustainability goals that we have and that the world is in dire need right now. So we're very much looking forward, and thank you very much for joining us here and being able to give us some insights from your perspective on that. I'd now like to give the floor to the next panelist, Mildred Nadah Pita, who is business executive, currently serving as the head of public affairs, science and sustainability Africa for Bayer Crop Science Division. So Ms. Nadah Pita, the floor is yours, or Dr. Nadah Pita, probably, sorry.
Thank you so much, Erika. Really a pleasure to join you all, distinguished speakers. I see Professor Niggli is here, really an honor for me to speak here with you. But I listened to what our representative from the FAO was saying with the professor. I think we're all going in the right direction, which gives a lot of comfort. First, I want to highlight that as an input provider, one of the global leading companies in agriculture, we do work in innovation. We understand the role that innovation plays, and we know that innovation can be that pivotal step into agricultural productivity, into agricultural sustainability, whether we're looking at food systems, whether we're looking at the planet. And as a company, I think we have embraced these. Let me give perhaps a little bit of perspective coming from Africa, the work that we're doing. So in 2019, Bayer took the responsibility of saying, look, we want to change food systems globally. How can we effectively do that beyond what we're doing now? What will be that leapfrog moment that we need to ensure that growth is across the globe? So one of the things we did was to take a commitment to say, in low and middle income countries, most of the food system, about 80% data shows, is being grown by smallholder farmers. What role then do we bring, or what role would smallholder farmers then play in food security and sustainability? We committed to reaching about 100 million smallholder farmers, of which, of course, Africa will play a very key role in those numbers. Smallholder farmers are, I think, the ones who suffer the most because, first, their access to innovation and technology sometimes is limited for various reasons. Their access to innovation and technology sometimes is limited due to a knowledge gap. So even in terms of capacity, education, I think Martin mentioned that what is important is that we make sure that it's a holistic approach. And I was happy to hear the professor really highlight some of the innovations that we can bring. Perhaps from the Africa perspective, one of the things that I would perhaps include into the social innovative part is financial innovation. How do we ensure that smallholder farmers across Africa access these innovations, these technologies? So one of the things we did was a stock taking. We sat across Africa with smallholder farmers. What are the pain points that has kept Africa, let's say, from being that, agriculturally viable and high productivity zone in the world? Africa in general, imports about 100 billion worth of food every single year. And that has taken a toll on even just how viable our economies are. So as a company, we've worked with partners across, ensuring that first we address the pain points that smallholder farmers are having. One of those pain points that has limited smallholder farmers to accessing innovations and technology, of course, is financing. Is that most smallholder farmers do not have access to viable financing, whether we're looking at blended financing, whether we're looking at even access to circular economies and the financings that go within those spaces. Is that those are some of the limits. Of course, there's a knowledge gap. How do we ensure that we're bringing in capacity and knowledge at the level of the smallholder farmer to access these innovations? And innovations are varying, whether we're looking at it from improved seed varieties or even other inputs that increase soil health, or even access even to markets. And I think the professor mentioned that access even to viable markets can be very pivotal in increasing productivity across. We have approached it through an ecosystem approach, so it's more holistic. How do we ensure that we're bringing partners that are ensuring soil health, whether we're looking at, just the traditional fertilizers or biologics, even organic fertilizers, we're bringing everybody on board. How do we ensure that we're bringing in value chain partners that would bring a level of standardization for farmers to be able to access some of these markets that are difficult for them? So what are the technological tools or the innovations that these farmers can access that can change their productivity, that can change quantity, can change quality? But at the end of the day, what we want to see is improved lives and livelihoods. However, the nick of it is this: we want to make sure that we do it in a responsible way, being cognizant of the needs of the environment and ensuring that farmers are managing water properly, are looking at soil health in a very holistic way, thinking about regenerative agriculture. And I do agree with the professor again, that one narrative is not enough. He mentioned something, he said we need a diversified production system that is science-based and ensuring that the increase in knowledge, even amongst policymakers, allows for data-driven conversations as opposed to the polarization that we're seeing across the continent, specifically in terms of adoption of technologies, whether we're looking at biotechnology, improved seed hybrid varieties. There are still farmers today in Africa that cannot access some of these innovations simply because the policies are not in place, simply because there is a should I say a politicization of some of these issues that would be able to allow farmers really to grow and to grow sustainably. So our commitment as a company is to ensure that at least we help in bridging that knowledge gap, that farmers understand that there are varieties of options that are out there for them to inculcate innovative ways of producing food, but to do that in a very, very responsible way. I may stop here. Erika, you let me know so that if there are questions, then I can answer them. Yeah, thank you.
Well, thank you very much, Mildred, and thank you very much for sharing this with us, which I think is extraordinarily exciting, and reminding us also that if we want to do the big changes, it starts from a lot of little changes, and that these changes will be all encompassing. There is a need for a whole kind of set of different toolkit of different innovations that also respect the different diversities and the different needs of different settings and different perspectives. And that if we want to unleash this enormous transformative power, that especially in continents like Africa, what you were mentioning, were so many small, it's not big players there, it's a lot of small players, that the narratives are really important. And it reminds me of one thing that my narrative scientist always says, which is that ideas are the most powerful tool that we humans have to undergo enormous change, because if we share an idea, that is kind of defining all the actions that we're doing towards the future. So I do think that the narrative approach here would be very useful, and I fully support Urs's message as well, that we really need to do this quickly so that we can unleash that power. But I think with this, and we'll come back to questions afterwards. I'm sure there are loads of questions that are coming up. I already have numerous, but I think this is a perfect moment to transition to our next speaker, who Mr. Ravichandran, who is president of the Global Farmer Network, to really go into the perspective of farmers on these issues, and to see what his view is on the debate that we've had so far. Mr. Ravichandran, the floor is yours.
Good morning. First, one correction. I'm not a president. I'm a member of this Global Farmers Network. I'm not the president.
Sorry, member of the Global Farmers Network.
I'm a proud member of the Global Farmers Network.
I've just promoted you, apparently. It's been said on a global stage.
Okay. So let me just briefly introduce myself. I'm a farmer from India, from southern part of India, from Tamil Nadu. I have been farming for over 37 years. I grow a variety of crops like rice, cotton, pulses, sugarcane, and so on. So I'm a third generation farmer. So I hail from a farming family. My father was, he was farming until 1984. So after his demise, I had to take care of the farm. This topic, innovation and sustainability in agriculture, do we need a new discourse, is certainly very interesting topic, very relevant. So there are several challenges we face in the farm front. So one is, the land area keeps reducing year after year. In India, the average land size is 1 hectare. So in Indian stand, my farm holding is 50 standard acres. That means, in Indian standards, I'm considered to be a big farmer. Nevertheless, that small with that holding, I must produce enough so that I help in addressing the food and the nutrition security. And there are several challenges. One is population. So the global population is 8.1. It is projected that it might rise up to 10 billion by 2050. So in India, our population has exceeded 1.4 billion mark, and we have exceeded China. The challenge is, every year after year, the land area keeps reducing because land gets fragmented and divided and redivided between the family members, and the income generated from the small holding is not sufficient enough for the farmer to sustain himself. So that is why many of the younger generation people, they are migrating to towns and cities. That is the main challenge we are facing in India. So in India, monsoon is the success or failure of the agriculture depends on the monsoon rain we get. We have two monsoons. One is southwest monsoon, and other one is northeast monsoon. As far as my state, Tamil Nadu, is concerned, it's as far as the southwest monsoon is concerned, it is rain shadow. Nevertheless, the southwest monsoon in the catchment area feeds our rice crop. We irrigate using that water stored during the southwest monsoon. This year being El Nino year, there is a monsoon failure. So the dams are dry and our crops are withering. So actually, the reality is climate change is not going to affect my future generation. It has already started having its adverse impact on us. So we must, whatever we do in the farming, it should be climate smart. It should, everyone should, whatever at their command, they should do whatever that is possible to reduce water footprint and carbon footprint. Being a rice farmer, so rice is normally grown under inundated condition. They flood the field by about 10 centimeters. It submerges to suppress the weed. Rice is not an aquatic crop. Rice grown under such inundated condition emits a lot of this CH4, methane gas emission, which is 25 times more lethal than carbon dioxide. So that is why I tried in my, this is where the technology enables us. So I tried in my farm growing rice using drip system. So I just maintained the moist level. To produce 1 kilogram of rice, we spend about 6,000 liters of water. Actually, I haven't measured the exact water saved using this, drip irrigation. But however, used just 1/4 of the water that my fellow farmers normally use. So that is where some of the innovative technologies help us. And because of in spite of the good year, in spite of the best yield, the income generated from the small holding is not sufficient enough to take care of our basic needs. That's why the younger generation, they are migrating to cities and towns in search of jobs. That is the cause of major worry. It is a typical case of oxymoron. On one hand, we are number one in spices production, number one in fruits production. Then jute, we are number one in cotton as well. We have exceeded other nations. Now we are number one in cotton. Rice, wheat, sugarcane, we are number two. That being said, see, at macro level, we are producing enough. to feed our population. But at the micro level, the individual farmer income is not sufficient to, as I said, to even to take care of our basic needs. That is the main challenge we face. That's why the average age of an Indian farmer is 46 years. So that is why younger generation, they are not into farming, they are migrating to towns and cities. So who is going to take care of the our farming in the next generation? That is another major challenge. And biotic and diabetic stress factors. So because of the climate change not only affects the monsoon. Some of the minor pests, they are becoming major pests. So these are serious issues. So farming impacts climate change, and the climate change impacts farming. So we are the ones who are affected by the climate change in a very badly. See, fortunately, there are ever so many technologies that are available. We must adapt such technologies to suit our needs. Some of the technologies that are practiced by my fellow farmers in other developed nations, we may not use such technologies. Verbatim and replica, we cannot replicate such technologies in our farm. So we must make it suitably amended. We must suitably, make modifications and adapt ourselves, adopt such technology by adapting, technologies that are used by other nations. Some of the technologies that are beneficial for the farmers in India are, this precision farming, micro irrigation. And some of the farmers in Punjab and Haryana, they have started trying this no-till farming, artificial intelligence. So our farmers, may be poor, but they are smart enough to use good technology. We use artificial intelligence to diagnose pest and disease. We take adequate care even before it starts, damaging our crops. And there are ever so many breeding technologies. Fortunately, for instance, last year in my farm, this year.
1 minute.
Yeah.
Just one final minute to give us time then for debate. I have lots of little points to come with.
Yes. So cover crops and farm mechanization, even robotics. Robotics to suit one of my friends, he has innovated a robotic cotton picking machine. So such things are, such innovative practices definitely will help farmers, and not only to, reduce this carbon and water footprint, but also they enable us to enhance our income. So we use this, biofertilizers. We use this pheromone traps to trap pests. And we use all kinds of technology. We don't leave anything. And the synergy of all the technologies, definitely they are helping us. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Dr. Ravichandran. And thank you also for bringing the reality on the ground. And I would say one of the core messages that I get from your contribution is really the fact that time has run out. I mean, it's not that time is in forward and we have a ticking clock. It's like time has actually already run out, and now we have to move very, very quickly. We don't have the luxury of time anymore, but we have to adapt to these things. And the fact that what farmers need is a plethora of different toolbox of innovations in order to be able to deal with these challenges in a very concrete way, to deal with climate change. In Europe, we also see crazy weather patterns, to deal with different diseases that are coming up. And these are unprecedented challenges. And so we'll also need unprecedented technologies and innovations of all different forms in order to deal with that. I think this is an excellent way to go to our last speaker and our last panelist for today, Dr. Petronella Chaminuka, who's head of the Economic Analysis Unit of the Agricultural Research Council of South Africa. Dr. Chaminuka, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much, Erika, and it is a pleasure to be part of this highly esteemed panel. So I represent an organization that is predominantly a science council. We conduct research in terms of crop technologies, livestock technologies, and natural resources. So some of our outputs include improved crop cultivars as well as livestock vaccines, for example, but also producing quite extensive forms of knowledge that have enabled our farmers here in South Africa and around the continent to be able to improve agricultural productivity. So I largely, and thank you very much, Prof. Niggli, for the presentation. I largely, I think, agree with everything that you have said. And I do agree that we need a change of narrative. But I also want to take it a step further, because I think we are in a time where there's a lot of talking that happens around the globe, but when you actually get to the action, and particularly for a farmer that is somewhere in an African village, for them to start reaping the benefits of this change in narrative, the approach, then I think we need to focus more on talk, actually not on talk. We need to focus more around actions to ensure a change of practice. And that is not only a change of practice in as far as we're talking about interfacing with the farmers and what we promote to farmers, but also a change of practice in terms of how we set priorities, for example, at research level, at policy levels, as well as the decisions that are made with regards to funding research and innovation. So if we are having this new change of narrative that we are not necessarily going the silver bullet approach, then one would also expect that there will be a change in terms of funding of research and innovation, but also investments. And I'm talking about investments from both public sector investment priorities, but also within the private sector itself. So I think the main premise that I want to bring to the table is that we need to be seen, to actually be actioning these things that we are talking about. And in terms of how we translate this into impact, for me, I want to also say that, when we talk about, sustainability, technology, and innovation within the food system, we need to more explicitly talk about issues of equity, inclusion, and diversity, because that is what actually enables us to have the kind of impact that this whole change in narrative is intended to achieve on the ground. And I'll give a quick example. Thank you, Mildred, actually, for outlining some of the work that Bayer is doing. But as you were talking, I couldn't help but, think of a presentation my colleague made a few weeks ago at a symposium where she was talking about the cost of producing potatoes among smallholder farmers, for example. Just the seed and the fertilizer alone account for 35% of the cost of producing, potatoes. This is before you talk about, market fees, the labor, machinery, the cost of land, and all that. So clearly, there is a problem with regards to all the efforts that we are putting in place to ensure that farmers have access to these technologies. Because if we develop these technologies, but they are not necessarily affordable for the farmer, then for me, I think it also then reinforces the inequality that exists, and we are, in a way, reversing whatever gains we are intending to achieve in terms of food security and poverty alleviation with the investments that we are making in science. So that is a very important point that I want to make. And part of the solution, I think, in terms of how we can still harness the power of science and innovation but in a way that is sustainable, is to recognize the fact that farmers in whatever context, they have survived in this environment for many years. There are many indigenous knowledge systems that exist that we can be able to use as the starting point in terms of whatever it is that we are proposing as solutions to this food systems transformation challenge. So I think it's important for us to build on indigenous knowledge systems, and that links as well in terms of equity and inclusion and recognizing diversity. Because when one looks at, for example, Prof, the principles that you outlined, I think all of them ultimately are very context specific in terms of how they translate to action. So we really, I think, for me, we need to have at the center, those humanity elements, equity, diversity, and inclusion, and tailor-making, the interventions in a way that addresses the diverse needs that exist on the ground. So maybe in a nutshell, let me stop there for now, just summarizing that we need to move from the narrative towards a change in practice, and that goes with everything that is then associated with working within those specific contexts, your co-creation, your joint agenda setting, as well as participation as the core in terms of how we do science, but also how we look at the whole issue around, sustainability in food systems. So thank you.
Thank you very much, Dr. Chaminuka, and thank you very much to all the panel for your introductory remarks. I have a lot of questions. I also wanted to inform all the participants that if you have any questions, please feel free to put them into the chat or to raise your hand. We will do the best to come to that. I think you all know how that happens. There's a little chat button in the bottom. There we go. But to start off, I'd like to maybe go back to Professor Niggli. We've now had this very rich tapestry of different experiences, perspective. There's a lot of things that have been echoed. There's a lot of very urgent things that have been underlined from the different panelists. What do you think could be, how could we strengthen the trust between the green movement on the one hand and technology providers to further cooperation rather than to push toward these very polarizing narratives? Do you have any concrete ideas given your experience and having lived in this world for a very long time? Professor Niggli, the floor is yours. Thanks,
Erika. Yeah, I think Petronella said something very important. I try to open up innovation to all kinds of innovations, but what is important for farmers is that innovation have to be affordable by farmers. So that is for me a very important criteria. We cannot, farmers cannot apply technologies which put them into debt situation. So, and this is one major problem which is criticized also, for instance, by patenting of new varieties with this molecular breeding technologies. So I think that this point has to be further developed, and we have to also to discuss that. And it's so with our commitment to sustainable farming systems, that is for sure one important point where we can make our messages more credible, but also by not bringing farmers into economic problems. So it has every technology which can be used has to serve farmers very specifically, and has to be tailored for the economic situation of the farmers, and has to be site specific. So all these kind of messages are important for creating trust in these quite powerful technologies, which can be used in a sustainable or in an unsustainable way, also in an economically unsustainable way.
Thank you very much, Urs. And you talked a lot about farmers and their position. So maybe I'd like to pass the floor quickly to Mr. Ravichandran. How do you think that the voice of farmers on the future of agriculture can be strengthened, particularly in this global UN context?
Yes. So any technology for that matter, it is going to benefit the farmers. So farmers' voice is very much important. So there are ever so many engagements like this. I'm really happy that you have invited farmers like me, farmer from a remote village in India. You have invited me. That itself is showing good progress. So this is the way we must communicate with the other global leaders and global. See, we need to engage in such global platforms. There are so many issues, the farmers, the problem in Ukraine. Certainly, it is going to impact farmers in rest of people in the rest of the world. So the Ukraine the Russian aggression over Ukraine, it is going to affect the farming scenery in the European Union. So these are some of the things. So therefore, farmers must be given priority in such global engagements. So this is my feeling, and it is a good start that the FAO has invited me to voice my concerns as a farmer. So there are ever so many committees and subcommittees by FAO, and I wish farmers are also included in that committees, so that we can reflect our thoughts, we can add our views through FAO, the concerns of the farmers all over the world. So the small farmers like me, we constitute more than 80% of the global farming population. So India, our population is 1.4 billion, out of which half a billion, half the population, about 0.7 billion population, they depend on agriculture either directly or indirectly. So we need to have our voice heard in the global arena. These kind of exchanges, these kind of interactions between farmers from the rest of the world and policymakers, global leaders, we must have this kind of exchange of views.
Well, thank you very much. I think that the natural follow-up from this is obviously to pass the floor to Dr. Vincent Martin from FAO. So going from the farmer's perspective to the FAO and global UN perspective. What do you think? How can we bridge this gap? And how can we move forward towards really empowering all the different stakeholders in reaching sustainability through innovation?
Thank you, Erika. I would like to mention two things here. Well, the first one is to say the time where we thought that. Can you hear me?
Perfectly well.
Okay, because you are frozen, so I was wondering. The time when we thought that innovation was about a transfer of technology, top down, etc., I think is over, and we have entered a new era where definitely during the last 15 years, maybe, or even a little bit more, whatever is done around innovation and technology is all around creating synergies, having an holistic perspective on how we have to solve this problem. A systemic perspective, looking at the root causes of the problems, but also inclusivity, bringing everybody around the table. So we've got many, many different examples whereby by bringing actors together, multi-stakeholder platforms have been created and have been essential for developing more equitable and inclusive value chains. And of course, here I'm thinking, for example, at the coffee in Latin America or dairy products in Ethiopia. We've got many examples where by creating these platforms, multi-stakeholder platforms, then we could walk the talk of this co-creation and have the voice of the farmers around the table, which is critical. So we could say this is now becoming obvious. We have to scale it up. We have to bring these approaches at a much larger scale and connect the different platforms that already exist. The second thing I wanted to mention here is just to come back on what was said by Petronella. I think is we need to recognize that definitely farmers are part of the solution and they are innovators per se. We need to hear them, but there is also a big knowledge gap. Between what is happening at the science and research level with what is coming down to the farmers through policymakers, their institutions, so that they can adopt this technology. And that was an observation of the Food System Summit to say the uptake, or even more at the larger UN level, saying the uptake of science and technology in the global south is still very, very low, while it's part of the solution. So we need to increase it. So we need to close this gap of knowledge and information on what is happening, what is existing, what kind of pre-emergent, emergent, or more mature technologies are existing, and having a full panorama of what exists today, and having it available, accessible to policymakers and farmers. And this is one of the gaps we are trying to close today in FAO by this initiative, which is called the Agro-Food System Technology and Innovation Outlook, which is more than just an outlook on what is coming up in a strong way in terms of emerging technologies and innovation, but also it will be a database country by country with a repository of all these innovation, emerging technologies and innovation in their context, in their policy context, in their regulatory context, and how they can be used by other countries in different contexts, so that we can also scale up the uptake of this science and technology. So just to summarize 2 points here, the first one is really the importance of bringing the voices of the farmers, co-creating the solution with the end users of this technology and innovation. This is happening. It can be strengthened. And the second one is we need to close this gap and have a full picture of all the innovations, technologies, emergings or more mature technology for agri-food system transformation, have this repository and giving it access to policymakers and farmers so that they know in which situation they can use which techniques and technology to address their own issues. Over to you.
Thank you very much. I think this is fascinating, and I'm sure there can be a whole discussion also on how new technologies like LLMs and AI can help personalize and make this easier to use and all of these things. But I see that we're starting to get some questions in the chat, so I'd like to actually address some of these. I'd like to now give the floor back to Mildred, Nadah, Pita. We have a question on how can we bring innovation directly to smallholders, and what does industry think about this?
Yes, first and foremost, from a buyer's perspective, industry is on this already. That, like I said earlier, we have put the smallholder farmer as the core of our business objectives in Africa and for most of our low middle income countries around the world, so the global south. To give very concrete examples of what we are doing. And I think we have been able also to bring a consortium of partners around the smallholder conversation in Africa, whether it's in access to different types of innovations, because we're here discussing numerous intervention points. One of them, of course, is, again, one of the biggest farmers' pain point is access to financing. As good as the technologies can be, and I think Martin mentioned that it's good, but it has to be accessible, it has to be affordable. So one of the things that we are doing as a company concretely is what we call portfolio optimization. And in doing that, we want to see the majority of farmers in Africa are farming around 1 acre land, half an acre in some even an eighth of an acre. So it's a very fragmented part of farming, right? The bigger farmers, the commercial farmers, they're open to technology. They understand the value of technology, precision agriculture, AI-powered, data-driven interventions that are helping them to ensure they know the quality of their soil. They even can tell you the weather in the next 2-3 months, which is helping them really to optimize production. However, with the smallholder farmer, it's always the challenge. So how do we ensure that we're bringing the right technologies at the right sizes, at the right prices, at the right time? One of the things that we have seen that has become very pivotal in changing this growth are digital tools that we're able to reach a farmer, for example, in Kenya, in a small village called Chaminuka, and on his phone, perhaps he has an application that is allowing him to look at his soil health, allowing him to diagnose diseases before the whole farm is ravaged, allowing him even to go much further to see what are the solutions that he will need to mitigate some of the pest and disease pressures that they have. And in doing that, we link them then to markets to say, this is what you need, this is where you can find it, or who can deliver this product to you. So digital tools become very pivotal for last mile reach for smallholder farmers in different parts of Africa. So portfolio optimization. On the other hand, of course, they can't access this if they can't find financing. So we're also working with a consortium of farmers in Kenya, for example, since I did make the example of Chaminuka, is a company called Apollo. Apollo provides data-driven sort of credit scoring for farmers that allows farmers to access inputs at a very reasonable rate, but it's available, and they have the chance that after the farming cycle to pay back. It's giving them access to insurance, which is something we never really thought about for smallholder farmers. So having access also to insurance facilities that would help them mitigate some of the risk. Another one, of course, is access to the value chain. If the farmers produce with the challenging infrastructural problems we do have in Africa, how are we sure that downstream, let's say interventions in terms of storage facilities, that farmers are ensuring that their produce are getting into these storage facilities? These storage facilities are also at a good price point that would allow them perhaps to store a bit longer, so that when the market value for these goods are better and they're able to access some of these markets. How do we ensure that even those within the value chain who are buying off as aggregators are paying full and fair prices to farmers? It's a very holistic, sometimes challenging area to work with smallholder farmers. And honestly, as a company, I think Bayer has done a lot in ensuring we're bringing in those linkages, even linkages to bigger finances, right? So blended financing pattern. And I'll give a good example, Erika, quickly. So we just came out a week and a half ago from the Africa Food Systems Forum in Dar es Salaam in Tanzania. Interesting conversations, partners, globally, we had everybody who was there. And one of the UN agencies, and not FAO, was there and said something like this. Somebody asked a question, say, how can we access all this financing? We hear, we want money, we need money, we can't access because we're not considered not bankable. How can we access some of these finances to be able to grow productivity? And one of the things the speaker said was that we would consider maybe anything below, say, $350,000 is too small for us to consider. How do we bridge that gap? So I did ask him a follow-up question. I said, look, these farmers need, some of them $50 only, $100 only, or even less to access some of these inputs. How do we bridge that gap? Reaching all these fundings that are available at a bigger level, how can it trickle down to the smallholder farmers? Because where we can bring transformative change is at the smallholder farmer level. So we're bringing farmers within the value chains to see how do you plug them into commercial banks, accessing some of this funding, but making it available to smallholder farmers, perhaps using AI to do credit rating as opposed to the traditional, credit facilities that banks, commercial banks that are used to, and at very maybe single-digit interest rates for farmers, and with the patience that if you are growing corn, give me a 90, 120-day window to be able to start repaying some of this debt. But Erika, let me just see this in closing very quickly. That, again, then you look at, do we have like early growing seeds, for example? If we have varieties, for example, for farmers who can grow maybe within less than 90 days for corn, that will be very transformative, right, for them, because then they can plan for the next season and the next season, and it can increase their productivity level. So there are many ways that smallholder farmers can be helped. As a company, we're ensuring that they're getting access to innovative seeds. We're seeing hybridization rates increase. We're seeing farmers who were used to maybe 2.4 tons per hectare of corn growing to about 8-10 hectares. It does have a huge difference on lives and livelihoods for some of these farmers in the most challenged communities across Africa. So yes, for smallholder farmers, yes, we can do it. We just really need to think more innovatively in ensuring that we're bringing support at the right place, at the right time, and at the right price. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mildred, and thank you very much for underlining the need really for continuous innovation in different ways, and really also in patterns of how things are done, and changing them and updating them to this new world that we're living in, where we will need rapid reaction systems to deal with all the problems that have been highlighted before. I'd now like to pass the floor to Petronella. You've been mentioned by many of the previous speakers, but we also have a question. You can choose how you want to give your kind of view here. We have a question from Lydia asking, what steps can be taken to bridge the gap between the scientific community and public opinion regarding new technologies? Petronella, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Erika. So for me, I think it comes back again to the issue of being intentional. Some of the issues have been mentioned, for example, creating platforms for multi-stakeholder dialogues, but also being more deliberate about inclusivity and accommodating different worldviews. And I'll give a quick example. When I was thinking about this topic earlier on, I reflected on a conversation I had with a colleague from Europe a few weeks ago that was telling me that, you know what, there is going to be a reduction in terms of funding for livestock research. Because of the whole sustainability concerns around meat consumption. And then I said to her, you know what, in as much as I understand this, I think sometimes it depends on, where you're standing to be able to see what the truth is. Because if you look at African livestock systems, for example, the reason that farmers rear livestock is not necessarily meat as top of the agenda. I grew up in a village where we would not eat meat despite my grandfather having so much cattle in the pen. Cattle is a form of a store of wealth. It is, a form of insurance if there is sickness or, death in the family. It is a way of, cultural and, social celebration that, that role that brings together communities. So there are multiple reasons why farmers keep cattle, and these are extensive systems, by the way. So if somebody is looking from the European perspective of intensive systems, the problems around what do we do with the waste from these intensive systems, then yes, it makes sense that maybe we should actually stop putting more money into livestock because we want to have less livestock production. But if you look at it from the other point of view, then you start to understand, and for me, this is why actually I like the point about, taking a systems approach to everything, because then it gives you a holistic picture. So we need for us to be able to close this gap and to move towards, kind of like a conciliatory position, if I can call it that, to accommodate these different views and, give a chance to look at things from the other perspective, which is why it's important as well to amplify the voices and the solutions that are coming from the global south as part of, what we want to scale up and what we want to fund. So let me stop there. Thanks.
Thank you very much, Petronella. And I think you highlight something extraordinarily interesting. We started the panel, obviously, the core question of this panel and why we set it up was really to look at innovation and sustainability in agriculture. Do we need a new discourse? And I'm based in Europe, I'm European, and I see how the conversation in Europe is very polarized, with one section of the discourse being very much focused on sustainability and seeing innovation nearly as a bad thing, and the other side who focus much more on innovation and seeing it in the opposite way. But I think you pinpoint something that's extraordinarily important, because we are moving, and this is also what Dr. Martin was underlining, into this new global world. And here we need a different discourse as well, because I think we're all used to having our own little, specific discourse from the regions that we are based in and using the perspectives there. But we really need to shift the global discourse and see, because this is not only a European problem or an African problem or an Asian problem, or this is a global problem. And we are seeing the effects everywhere in the world. So there's a double, I would say, need for a new discourse here that I think would probably be something that I think we should be investigating further and see what do we see when it comes to the narratives. This is something that Secretary General of the UN has been underlining a lot when it comes to obviously looking forward towards the UN Summit of the future and the need for a new global governance, and governance of food structures and how we think about this should probably be a part of that. But I would like to give everyone, I am aware of time. In theory, we have 3 minutes left, but we have a little bit of wiggle room there. So I would just like to ask everyone in the panelists, having heard where we are here, having seen the problems and the solutions, we obviously want this discussion to be a starting point to move forwards and to see where do we go from here. So to really let me know and to let the panelists, the audience know, what do you think would be the #1 priority in moving forward? What concrete action do you think would be most important in order to move towards a vision for sustainable agriculture with the support of innovation? So I'll start with giving the floor to Professor Urs Niggli. What would you say is the #1 priority for you?
Thanks a lot, Erika. Listening to our debate, I think we have exactly the same problem, whether it is in Africa, in Asia, or in Europe. The United States are not part of our debate at the moment, and this problem is really this gaps in society, and I think even in countries like Switzerland, where we have a vocational school system for 100% of all farmers, they are well educated. It's very difficult to bring new innovation and also new knowledge about how to become an agroecological farmer from science to farmers. And that's why the way the European Union has chosen for the Horizon program to work with living labs. I think this is really a crucial step forward, because then you bring farmers and farm advisors on the farms, you bring them together, you bring them, you have at the same eye level a debate, a knowledge exchange, and then you get immediately a holistic understanding of what is the best innovation for each farmer. So for me, this was a major step forward, and also in Switzerland we will start soon such a living lab strategy, because we want to make. We don't want to have only more organic farmers. We want to help to convert conventional farmers into farming systems where they can substantially reduce their negative environmental impact. So this living lab idea is quite a promising one, and for me that has the priority.
Thank you very much, Professor Niggli. I am aware in theory we have run out of time, but I would ask if everyone has a couple of minutes just to give me their view of concrete outcomes or next steps that you would like us to do. Dr. Martin.
Yeah, it's a complex question. I guess there is not one solution, but to be brief, I would say from what I'm hearing here and the situation we are facing, which is now global, it's not anymore a problem of producing more, problem of quantity. It's really a social problem, a societal problem. I think that's something that's coming up regularly. So I would say my top priority, I mean, the thing that comes to my mind is we need open and responsible innovation. Walking the talk of what has been discussed at the Food System Summit. We have the momentum, we have the framework, we have the support from the global leaders. Now we have to translate that into actions and operation. And I think the heart of it is open and responsible innovation that brings together this social aspect, this ethics, the inclusivity, the access, the affordability. I mean, everything that has been discussed around the problematic around the smallholder farmers, which are absolutely critical. I mean, they are the most numerous in terms of population that can help in this food system transformation and can benefit from it. We need to look at them, and we need to really, I think, push the agenda of open and responsible innovation. Thank you very much. I think these are very relevant and important position, and also I like the reminder of the momentum that we have, and that what makes it more important that we come with concrete actions to move forward in this momentum. I'd now like to give the floor to Mildred, Nadah, Pita. What would be your #1 priority?
My #1 priority, I think it's to bring everybody to the middle. The polarization is not helping farmers, is not helping communities that are suffering the most, especially from the impact of climate change. Let's all come together, whether it's policymakers, the private sector, public research. We all have a role to play. We must have a holistic and systematic approach to solving some of these challenges. So the stakeholder engagement together, we will solve it. So for me, the action point is that we must reach out across the aisle and find tangible, actionable, quick solutions for farmers who are suffering in the most disfranchised regions of the world. Yeah.
Thank you very much. I think that's the core of the really core message to why this is such an important debate. Mr. Ravichandran, the floor is yours. What would be your #1 priority?
Yes. In this highly polarized discussion, one common factor I noticed is, there is a consensus that we should produce more from less resources. So that is one thing that is really encouraging. And I think we have to redefine sustainability. We must trust the voice of the scientists and those technologies that are proven, scientifically proven, must be incorporated in this sustainability. That is where that is where innovation helps in maintaining the sustainability. Innovation and sustainability can go hand in hand together. So at the end of the day, we must trust the scientifically based, scientifically proven technology, and we must adopt such technology so that we achieve both these objectives, that is sustainability and innovation.
Thank you very much, Ravichandran. And Dr. Petronella Chaminuka, what would be your #1 priority?
So for me, I think from a research and innovation perspective, I would say that we need to move towards incentivizing approaches to research and innovation that are inclusive and systems-based, as well as focused on harnessing the power of diverse worldviews. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And I think with this, I'd like to thank the whole panel for all your input. This will be actually important for Reimagine Europa in building our future program when it comes to, we have a task force on sustainable food systems and innovation. So this will be inspiring all the work that we develop in the future. I think a key message, and I think this is really what we get and what I've heard echoing from the different speakers throughout this very fascinating debate, and that is that moving beyond the existing polarizing debates is not only something that we desire and something that was positive, but it's really something that is absolutely necessary because, and this is something that we have been analyzing also at Reimagine Europa, polarization leads to stalemate, and it means that you don't move forward in either way. And right now, we do not have the time or the luxury to wait around. We need to move forward. We need to move forward towards sustainability, and innovation is a key way to get there. We have an interesting question also in the chat. I'm sorry we didn't get there, but I do think that is also relevant. And that is, how does one counter the common narrative that sustainable farming will be detrimental to food security and food affordability? And I think this really underlines the problems that exist on both sides of this debate, in that we are sitting with old narratives that don't fit the world that we live in anymore. And in order to move forward to deal with these very real challenges that we have, because as we saw, climate change is here, geopolitical shocks are here, these things are happening, pests are changing, and we will need to have the agility and the availability of all the possible tools to be able to deal with this effectively. So thank you very much for joining us here this morning, afternoon, evening. I understand that we're joining here from all over the world, so it's very difficult to pinpoint a time of day. But I think that underlines the diversity that is here, and the diversity of narratives and perspectives, and the need to embed this diversity also in how we see narratives for the future, and to enable us to have this agility, flexibility, and openness. So thank you very much, everyone, and a special applause and thank you to our distinguished panelists. Thank you very much for joining us.
Thank you. Bye.
Thank you all.
Bye-bye.